All right, if we can go ahead and rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. We'll go ahead and call this meeting of the Sandy City Council to order. I guess it's actually a committee of the whole meeting, isn't it? Getting a little ahead of myself. So we'll call the committee of the whole meeting to order. We have all members present. And, give me 1 second here. All right, do we have any public comment this evening? Come on up, Leroy. If you could, just state your name and address for the record there.
Good evening. Leroy Johnson, 510 Main Street West, Isanti. I'm not on the agenda because I wasn't aware of this project that was going to be completed as quickly as it was, and it's in regard to the replacing of the botched up sod job that was done on the sidewalk installations along Main Street. That project was completed today, however, and I have a request, but I didn't know the project was going to be completed as quickly as it was, so
I think we were talking late August is what we had originally thought, right?
Yes, I don't know if you want me on the
I
agenda.
guess it is late August, yeah.
I didn't know if you want me in the agenda or if you wanted me to. proceed.
Go ahead, yeah, you're up here, yeah, let's.
Okay, number one is a thank you. I want to thank Matt Sylvester and the city crew for the job they did here today. It was awesome. They did a beautiful job, and they're to be complimented and congratulated on that. Now, with that being said, now that that is completed, the old sod has been taken out, and black dirt has been brought in, it's been seeded. Now we're down to the watering. Now the watering, Elaine, who lives in 508, her land joins with mine in 510. Neither one of us have used any watering this summer on our lawns at all because there has been no need. But now this new seeding has to be watered, or we're going to have the same situation that we had with that previous project. So my request is for council consideration to see if we can get some compensation for the water that's being used only on that seeding. We are not using our irrigation systems. We do not use sprinkling systems at all this summer. So the water usage that we're using is for personal use, for household use. And so I'm asking if a council would consider if you took our average water usage for the month of May, June, July, and August. They're running very similar, and they're very close to each other from month to month to month. Now, anything above that is going to be used for the watering of this project, and I'm wondering if there could be any financial compensation for that portion because it's going to require quite a bit of water to keep this going. So that's my request for the council.
What do you guys think?
Can't really take action on it. You can just voice their opinion.
Yeah.
I think they put up with enough of what was going on there. I don't see why that wouldn't, in my opinion, be impossible to do. I mean, but it's gonna take staff time to figure that out.
How many times are you watering that or plan to?
Started today already. As soon as the crew left, I'm using soaker hoses on it because we're not wasting, we're not shooting a lot of water up in the air. This is an area of approximately about 100, probably 125 feet long and about 2 to 3 feet wide is that area that runs alongside of the sidewalk. Also, across the street over into the mailbox, they redid that. That's all done as well. So they've done that now, but so I've turned the water on today. So the soakers have been running since about 2 o'clock this afternoon, and they just turned them off now. But it's going to take a while to get this all soaked up. Once we get it soaked up, then you got this probably daily watering for a short period of time. You got to keep it moist, or we're going to have the same thing as we had before. They tried to lay sod on a base that's similar to this floor right here, and it's pretty difficult to make make sod grow on top of concrete. So it failed, and it was no fault of the city, it was the fault of the contractor who put in that project. So,
Well, we hired the contractor, so I mean, I think, yeah, I mean, that's why we wanted to make it right for you, but, I don't know, what do you got anybody opposed to that idea? And then we can ask staff about what they think, no? What do you guys think? I mean, is that something we can,
I think the easiest thing would be to just give them a billing credit.
Right.
Yeah.
For example, $10 is roughly 3,300 gallons.
I was trying to figure out how many,
I mean,
how
just
much,
rough math, and I 3,300 gallons is a fair amount of water, but, council could say, yeah, $10 or 15 or 20 or 5 or whatever, and we would just apply the credit, because there wouldn't be any sewer charges on the extra usage, because that's already based on winter average to begin with. So we really are only talking about just the extra water. So the simplest, fastest way to do it is just give him a billing credit. Just give him a 10 or 15 or whatever dollar credit on his bill, and
is that something we gotta,
I'm really expecting no compensation other than the water that's being used for this project. That's really all we're saying. I thought if my water bill, without looking it up, averages $40 to $45 a month. So for the 3 months we took, May, June, and July, they run very close to that. Add those up to get an average monthly usage, and then now what we're using is going to be showing up. My next water bill comes in to say $60 a month. There's a $20, I don't know if it's going to come in 50, I don't know if it's going to come in 30, or 45, or I don't know what it's going to be, because we just turned it on today.
okay.
That's all I'm
What,
asking.
do we need to bring that back to council to take action on it? And
Yes, Mayor and Council, we would need to take action on that because it is giving out or not charging a fee or giving a credit. Either way you do it, it should go back to council to a vote. The other thing I would encourage you to think about is, I don't know if he's asking on behalf of everyone, but there are a number of properties that are being affected. They may have the same request. You may want to treat them all the same. You could do it just for one, but
was
they
there
could.
3 properties? Was there other properties that we've fixed
I know
along
that-
with Leroy's,
No
or?
idea.
Yeah, there are
The only
multiple
one I'm
properties.
aware-
I'm not exactly sure on the number, but I can get that.
I would think that probably a month of watering should be more than adequate, because, you go through into September, you're pretty much wanna let that lawn go dormant anyway at that point, that grass.
Right.
I don't know about the dormancy, but I know you gotta get it, that takes a lot of water to get it started. If you don't keep it going, it's seeded, it's not sodded, so it's gonna take a considerable amount. And,
yeah.
And they've done a nice job up to this point, we certainly want to keep it going. So that's my only request for council action on this particular matter.
Do you think 3,300 gallons is enough?
I don't have a clue. I have no.
It says here 2 to 4 times a day for 5 to 10 minutes at each time. So call
I
it 20 minutes a day, one soaker hose. I have no idea what that equates to, but
That's why I'm saying, I can tell you very closely, once a month has gone by, I can give you a pretty good idea. This is the amount of usage that will be. That's, to me, that's the only logical way I would know of
Mayor
the
and-
usage.
You wanna, Steve's got a great idea. I think let's revisit it next month. Come back. We're open to suggestions on it, but, now don't go fill in a swimming pool or anything like that. And I know you, I know you're gonna try to get away with it
I've
too.
never had a swimming pool, and so I don't intend on filling one. No, so but that's my request for council action.
Okay,
So,
well, yeah, do you wanna come back in a month and let us know, and we'll, then if it's, $70 instead of the 45, maybe we can just address it then and as,
yeah, because we won't have any problem going back to figure it out.
Yeah.
And that way, if you're gonna go for, halfway through September or all the way through September before you feel like it's, then we can just look at it after the fact too. That is also a simpler.
And not all the properties have been completed, but I did find out it's between 8 and 10. That's
Okay.
the approximate number.
And have we done this for other projects?
We have not done a replacement like what's been done, to my knowledge, at all on any projects. We have asked the contractor to come back. They have
this
had to
project
tear it
was
out.
like 2 years ago is when it actually
Right.
was done, and then they did come back and replace it, I think, a second. They did
only-
it once, and then they replaced it already, and then it still
Well,
never took,
right.
so.
But
The only-
I personally put the total fault on that contractor. Because the watering system that they used was, They might have taken that water truck and brought it in here and tried to make this,
The only
Garbage
other
road.
one that we did anything like that
the
on
water
was
was not
Sixth Avenue,
utilized for the purpose that it
but they came
should have
back
been,
and
so.
rectified it, and that went away. That
It was
done.
just a very,
Yeah, that's
So
and
fair.
of
nothing
course,
that the
once it
homeowners
gone,
had to
they did
deal with.
replace it
Yeah.
once. But it doesn't make any difference, you can replace it 10 times, and if you're not gonna get it, take care of it properly, the same thing's gonna happen. And then, of course, they fulfilled their agreement, you see, by doing it the second time over, but that doesn't, to my opinion, then we shouldn't relieve them of the responsibility.
That's why I always say we need to hold these contractors to a standard, because they get away with a lot of stuff that we don't know about, and it really, it comes down to the residents, and half the time the residents don't complain, and then they just take care of it themselves, and I don't think that's right, because the taxpayers pay for that sort of service, and then, so,
I can about imagine what you're gonna hear when you try to contract the contractor to have them after 2 years. I wish you luck.
Mayor and Council, I would like to add, kind of to what Councilmember Holmgren was maybe asking. We haven't done it for a street project like this, but anytime that a plow does tear up sod or someone's yard, we do put the same process down. We put black dirt, we put seed, and we do not water it for them. They are responsible for it. So if you're looking to kind of do a similar comparison,
Yeah.
there's no credit given, there's no leeway on that. That is just for them. And
I would just hate to see this start a trend and for all those instances where,
You know, it's a little different when the plow hits it. This thing was a
Yeah.
lot different, because they
This is
tore it up.
entirely different.
I agree.
I guess I take pride in our yard. I like the way our yards are looking, and I plan, and in my intent, and this has been an eyesore now for the last 2 years. And so, in this particular case, I do not feel it should be my responsibility to, we will maintain it. We will keep it going from this point on, but I do feel that the water usage should be, there should be some compensation.
We've never done it before, but nobody's ever asked either, so, right? So, yeah, if you come back next month, we'll figure out what we owe you, and we'll figure it out. We'll take care of you, so, okay? As long as you don't fill the swimming pool. So,
6,000 gallons.
okay, any other public comment? All right, we'll move on to our first business item, which is E1, the agenda request from Kathleen Katie King. And then if you could just state your name and address there for the record, please.
Hi, I'm Kathleen Katie King, and I live at 313 Palomino Road, Southeast Isanti.
Hi, I'm Amanda Holland. I'm her realtor with Realty Group. We've had her house listed for about 81 days now, and we've run into a huge problem with her house because she does have to connect over to the city sewer and water when they redid that road back a few years ago. She has septic and well there now that are not going to be able to be, renewed into the sale. So part of the cost with this, she was expecting the cost to be around $10,000 to switch over. The bids we're getting for the work are between like $16,000 and $20,000 just for the work. That doesn't include the $7,000 or just over $7,000 in whack and sack fees to connect to the city sewer and water. So we're looking for a way to make that more affordable for her so that we can get this place sold. We haven't been able to, we've had a couple buyers that were really close, but because of the cost of the sewer changeover, it just wasn't doable. And they, of course, need to net a certain amount out of it in order to get out. She's been there since 1985. It's been a while.
1985.
I've been there over 30 years.
Yeah, so she's really hoping to be able to kind of move on from here now, but we're hoping that we can do something with the whack and sack fees to help get them done. And when we talked to the city about it, they did say that one option would be to abate them to the taxes. So we're just seeing if that's something that we could get done.
I got a couple questions. So she's trying to sell her property. Are the mortgage companies that are trying to mortgage or say they will mortgage, are they the ones requiring her to hook up?
It was our understanding too that the city and county were gonna require it because she has a non-compliant system.
Okay.
And
Now, the city, we don't require people to hook up.
We would only require to have hookup if you failed or didn't pass. So with the well water, you are able to shock it. Sometimes people fail for bacteria or something. You are allowed to shock it, have it retested, resubmit results, which we actually are not requiring anymore at this time. We used to. We need to see the proof from the laboratory. For the septic goes through Isani County, and they usually provide us with notification that it failed, and they are the ones who determine if you can make a repair or replacement, or, you know, a semi-replacement or something, but if they say that you're not able to do that, needs a full, then we have you hook up at that time. So do you know?
That's where we feel we're at.
Okay, you know that it's failed?
Yeah, it has not had the compliance inspection done, we just know it won't.
Okay.
Okay, you're guessing it won't pass. So, I know WAC fees are governed by, what, the Metropolitan Council? And it's like a $2,400, $2,500, no?
It's governed by our fee schedule.
I know it is, but, okay, I couldn't find anything on WAC fees, only SAC fees for sewer. So I did as much research as I could on this. Where I'm going with this is, did we even have that fee schedule? How long have we had it? And at the price it is right now, how long has it been there? And what was it back in
I think we
the
just,
90s when they actually put in the sewer and the water?
did we lower it recently, Mike?
Yeah, 2018.
It was
Yeah, I probably
2018.
did the analysis in 2017, not long after I got here, and I don't know if we went in half, but it was solid, like 45% something. It was a very big drop at that time, and since then, it's just been 3% increase. Just basically inflation since then.
Well, I mean, I guess you don't know for sure if the county would say that the septic has failed then, or?
Just from my
Because, I mean, we're not
experience.
requiring you to hook up. I mean,
Yeah, just from the experience that I have with septic systems, we don't have any
yeah.
hope for this
Okay,
one to go
and no
through.
hope to repair it or get it into compliance or anything like that?
I'm Kathy's husband, my name is Jerry King. The septic tank itself is there, it's still functional. It's the drain field that is no longer existing. After the number of years, it just failed. So I don't know what they consider for passing, if they need the drain field to pass it,
Yeah,
or
they'll
if they
perk
don't.
test it.
Pardon?
They'll perk test your soil. What
Okay.
that does is that they drill a hole, they pour water in it, and see how long it takes to drain down. That's called perk testing.
Okay,
And if the soil's too saturated and it doesn't drain, then they say you have to put a mound system in.
okay,
So that's what the county will come out and they'll perk test it to see if it's functional.
okay. No, is that something that we could do in lieu of hooking up to the city water? Is to have a mound system put in?
Yeah.
See, we thought we could.
Yeah, we were under the
think we-
impression that once we sold the house, the new owners had to hook up to city water and sewer.
No, no.
Okay,
So the
all right.
We changed that
We
recently.
changed that
yeah.
recently.
Okay.
Just to clarify, the design though of whether a mound system can fit on your property or lot, depending on how large your lot is, that all is determined, okay, so that all is determined by the county.
Okay.
They would be the ones who would say it's not even feasible to put in, and then if they want to allow you to put a holding tank, that's all on the county.
Okay, well, thank you. That, like I said, we were under the impression that it had to be automatically hooked up.
No.
We just changed
No.
that.
Yeah,
Okay,
It has to be so.
What my suggestion would be, go to the county, address this with the county first before you try to go do anything else. Because they're the one that's gonna control that on you. If the county says, no, it's not feasible, then unfortunately, you're gonna have to look at the whack and sack fees at this point.
And so just looking forward to that, if we end up down that route back with them, is that something that they would typically just like spread out through a certain amount of years then on the taxes? Or, I mean.
That'd be a Mike answer.
So, first of all, we've not done this exact arrangement here, but I understand other cities have. And as far as I can tell, as long as there's money owed to the city and there's a benefited parcel, it qualifies to be assessed. right, then that is at the council's direction to assess that. And at which point, then I just need to know the terms. Do you want to charge interest? Do you want to give it, 1 year, 5 years, 10 years? What, that would be information I would need to have to be able to send it to the county. If I provided no additional information, just an amount, the default position of the county would be, it is all due next year and no interest. If I give them nothing, that's what they would automatically do.
I think you guys are in good position, and you got a lot of options. I mean, even if we assess you, I mean, I'd probably fight all I can to get as low or no interest as possible on the whack and facts, only because you didn't even belong to the city, you were
Correct.
kind of forced to belong to the city, and now you're in a circumstance where you want to sell your house, but you can't sell it because you're in a city.
But the whole thing is your buyer will be assessed that whack and
Right,
fee.
right.
And I'll be honest with you, if they're moving into town, they may not even wanna mess with that. That might be something that you can look at to them, the buyer, and say, hey, you wanna purchase this property, and if it's gotta, if you gotta get whack and sack, well, how do you wanna handle it? Because it's gonna be assessed to your taxes, that's not gonna be theirs, cause they're gonna be the new owners.
Right.
So how do they wanna address that? You might be able to say, I'll fidget a little money on the sale price to help compensate you on that. Then your hands are clear of it, and the new purchaser would have to deal with that. That's just the way I would look at it.
We've had 3 buyers through there, and they're interested, but because of the issue, they want us to pay for it. and
With
that
our
is not
knowledge,
gonna
yeah,
happen.
with our knowledge of, okay, the best of our knowledge, the new owners had to hook up to city water and sewer. Okay, now, with the other options we have, we can make the new buyers aware of that, and that could make a difference.
Yep.
Right. We appreciate your gentleman's time, we really do. Thank you.
Yeah, you bet. No,
Yeah,
that's-
reach out to any of us if you have any questions.
We will. Thank you very much.
And I mean, it was for things like this that we made those changes, because we didn't want to require people, like George said, that were forced into the city, that we didn't want you to have to connect if you didn't want to, so. Yeah, no, we're glad to do it. Thanks for coming in, guys, and hopefully.
Thank you very much.
Hopefully you figure something out. Yeah, you bet.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to E2, the agenda request for Isani Lions.
Hi, I'm Elaine Fisher. I live at 508 Main Street West, and again, thank the city crew for what they did for me today. I greatly appreciate it. I'm here representing the Lions. We've been in this community for 50 years serving you, and we would like to ask your permission to put one of these containers here at City Hall and also over at the community center to collect eyeglasses, hearing aids, and cell phones. Keep them out of our landfills. The eyeglasses, they're saying now kids 2 and 5 need glasses. And these are processed right up here at Pine City, so anything we can do is greatly appreciated. I'd like to have them sit on a counter, because if you put them on the floor, people use them as a garbage can. And I prefer that not to happen, but if it does, and I will be responsible for picking them up, my name and phone number and everything is on them. So if we could ask your assistance in helping the Isani Lions, we'd greatly appreciate it.
I'd like to see maybe put one at the liquor store. Is that
Me too.
humanly possible?
Okay, I did get an additional 2 containers, so I can put one out there also, if that's your wish.
If I was as a city council member and said no, my father-in-law would kill me. He's a Lions member out of North
That's right.
Dakota, and he is very passionate about the eyeglass containers, and I know that the Lions have, for years, have done the eyeglass collections, and it's been tremendous for the community. So I'm gonna tell you right now, I'm 100% for it.
Mayor and Council, I think it is a great idea for the liquor store as well. I'm not sure how much counter space. If you could find like maybe even a plant stand, we can get it up off the ground.
Okay.
Or
That would
some
probably
kind
be
of
the best at
stand.
the liquor
Because
store.
I'm not sure if we would have counter space, but yeah, if it was up, so, because I imagine people would put trash in there, get it off the ground. I think there'd be floor space for it.
And then if you could just put a blurb on your Isanti in here that the drop-off points are the community center, the liquor store, and City Hall.
Maybe
I agree,
Facebook
that's
too.
a great idea.
Facebook.
That the residents of our community know that we can drop them right off here and help our local Lions Club. And as always, we're looking for new members.
And how long were you planning on having these out? Like in
Year-round.
year-round, forever and ever, or?
Well, as long as there's a need and I'm in the community, I mean, if I left, I'm sure there would be other Lions that would pick up.
Okay.
If there's
I
ever
would,
a problem with it.
I would say I would rather do it as a trial period, and if people are using them, then we keep them out longer, but if they're still empty, I'd say we take them down after a certain amount of time. But I would like to try it. I just don't know, just keeping it out there for 5 years and it's never been used, I would say take it down at
I don't
that
think
point.
Elaine's gonna keep checking it if
No,
it's
I-
been in there for 5
I get
years.
that, but I-
You'll find a better,
If it's,
you'll
I've
find a
said
better
it for a
spot,
long
won't you?
time, she's not gonna waste her time with it.
Yeah, I'd
Yeah,
like
you'll
to,
find a better spot if it's empty, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, if you could update us in a year, that'd be great.
Okay.
I think
I have
that's fair.
a couple of things, questions maybe. Does the Lions have a Facebook page?
Yes, but it's really not up to date.
The reason why I ask is we don't typically, not that it can't change, but we don't typically do Facebook posts for other, but we do share. So if you created a Facebook post saying Isani Lions has these drop-off locations and made it a shareable post, I can then share that to our page instead of it being the city putting a nonprofit, because then I just would caution the council about all nonprofits coming in, because we have kind of just for time.
I knew you were gonna say that, Josie.
I'm sorry. Well, I'm glad I'm that predictable. So if you could create the post, we can share it on your behalf. We've done it for the chamber. Those things are pretty easy if that's okay with council.
I think that's fair, yeah. If you guys could do that and just let us know, we can definitely share it. As far as the Isanian, which is what you're gonna say next, is my article already completely submitted and ran for this next? Otherwise, because with the city, probably can't do it, but I could probably include that in my article, right?
It's not been published yet, right? There's still time to
Okay.
amend that.
I'll put something in, because technically the Isanian probably can't put something out unless we, but I could write something about that in my article as far as something going on around town, so. So, yeah, so I will include some language, if you can remind me though, maybe? Okay. All right.
Thank you very much for your support.
Thank you.
And
Hey,
I did have.
Thank you for everything you guys do, so.
I did have something to sort of add to this. I've had 4 Lions members now ask me about alcohol at the amphitheater, Amp It Up events, outside alcohol, and how that has affected them selling alcohol and planning their kegs and everything. I didn't know if that has been a problem for any other vendors outside alcohol, or if that's something we can discuss.
I can say the mayor council, the one feedback that I had received was that the crowd is a very different attendance crowd at the Amp It Up events. So I've been told that the Lions don't receive as much sales at those, like they do the street dance. Street dance are amazing. They're able to gain a lot of funds for the organization and do more things with that. But I think because maybe it's more family-oriented, just a different crowd comes out to Amp It Up. That was the feedback I had heard. So not that, I didn't hear that people were bringing in their own alcohol per se, it just they didn't have hardly any sales compared to the street dance downtown.
Okay, Travis, have you seen any issues at the Amp It Up events with people that are maybe too drunk? See, the good thing with the Lions or Thunder Brothers selling alcohol there is they can cut someone off or they have a little bit of a control versus if someone's bringing in all their own and they get super sloppy drunk. I don't know if you've had any issues or.
Yeah, no, we haven't had those issues.
Okay.
But between the street dances and Amp It Up, I mean, there obviously are people bringing their own
There's a
stuff,
lot bringing in.
you know,
Sure.
and
A lot more than you think.
we don't, if it's very visible that people are bringing, we're not gonna let somebody bring a case of beer into a downtown
Okay.
street dance or, that type of thing. But in the environment that it is, you can understand if you go there with your wife and kids and you bring your cooler with your 3-4 beers, we don't, in a can koozie, we haven't been harassing those people.
Okay. Do you think it's anything we need to look into, or is it?
Well, that'd be a decision for council,
Okay.
but if you can imagine, if you have us going through and checking
Yeah.
everybody's can koozie and kicking them out and telling them they can't
Right.
have it, it's gonna portray an image.
Sure. Well, I said I'd bring it up because I don't know if there's anything we can do or just.
Well, like I said, that's what we can do. We can have a zero tolerance on bringing it in, but if that's the
I don't
image
want
that
I don't
you
want
wanna
that.
have.
Yeah. No.
You're gonna cause more issues.
We want our vendors to do well too, but.
Right,
but,
it's for
yeah.
the I want the vendors to do well,
I know,
so
but-
is there anything, any creative ideas, or? I guess I just
I
thought to
mean,
bring it up
the
because.
October 5th one is supposed to be more of a Oktoberfest sort of a theme, so hopefully that will, bring in people that are looking to drink. I mean,
True.
and
try
the
new
Lions will sell more beer. I don't know if you guys can stock a different flavor or something like that that maybe is unique or whatever, but yeah, I think trying to keep outside alcohol out would be,
Yep,
So
I agree. I just-
Cambridge Softball Association up at the ball fields up at Sandquist Park, they are starting to have beer trucks there for like the fire department, and I think the Lions or whatever up there. And he posts on the Cambridge Isani Softball Association, no outside beverages or food are allowed. They do make money on the concessions, and, when I used to be part of it, but I didn't drink then, but, I mean, I always tried to buy food from there, or at least eat before I got there. But if I wanted something, I'd go in the concessions, because they do make money on that, and that's what it's all about. Before that, ball teams would bring in their coolers with their beer, but they would check the coolers, people would bring in coolers, they'd check the coolers to make sure there's no outside beverages being brought in. Kinda hard to stop it, but at least you tell people, we encourage you not to. I mean, that would be the only thing I'd say we do, but I'm sure even the rodeo, as soon as that dance starts, there's cans floating underneath those fences faster than you can count shake a stick at. And I know that Main Street dances, same thing. There's a worn out trail in the asphalt that goes all the way over to the VFW and back. And I mean, when they come back, I've seen them walking with their hands full like this with 3, 4 or whatever. You're never gonna stop it. So,
There's not a problem. I don't think there's a problem. Travis isn't saying there's a problem. Let people be people, let them have their fun. If we have an issue in the future, maybe we address it.
sounds good to me.
Yep.
Moving on to E3, the deck permit fee based on size. This is something that Steve and I had been talking about somewhat recently, and I don't know everything there is to know about permitting, but the way that I understand it is that we charge the permit fee based on the cost of the project, right? Is how we do deck permitting. And you and I were talking, I mean, why, if it's based on size, that would seem to make more sense to me, I would think, because the construction's gonna be the same. I mean, depending on the materials that you use, there's a wide variety of cost, but construction, I would think, would be similar no matter which material you would use. So is there really an added cost to, to building something that's a different type of material that just happens to be more
I
expensive?
mean,
So-
when you take a look at it, they use pressure treated, green treated, brown treated, whatever, versus composite deck. There's triple the cost. Okay, prime example, my own, that I'm gonna be building, 16 by 16. I'm using composite decking on it. It's all green treated, everything else. But the cost of my deck, I'm not saying this because I'm a cheapskate, but I'm actually getting my deck for nothing. A guy owes me some favors, so I'm pulling them in. That deck would be $12,000, $14,000 because of being composite with metal railing, aluminum railing, everything. It's not composite, it's not pressure treated or whatever. If it was just pressure treated with pressure treated railings and everything else, it's probably $6,000. It's costing me $350 for a simple 16 by 16 deck. The inspector needs to come out one time only. I'm using diamond pier footings. I'm not having dug down footings and poured footings. Diamond pier footings are allowed per state construction code, and they use them Minneapolis, St. Paul, which is one of the most stringent building codes there is. And they're legal here too. So I do not need to dig down footings and have them come out and do a footing inspection. I'm building this simple 16 by 16 deck. And that permit is $350. And I'm sorry to say this, even though I'm on council, I'm half-assed tempted to say to hell with the damn permit because it's ridiculous to be that much money. I am pulling the permit. My deck will probably be done before I ever figure out how to get the damn permit because it's a pain in the butt. And Stephanie knows I'm frustrated with this thing. It's just ridiculous. It's just, as soon as my material shows up, I'm gonna start building it. if I got the permit or not, because they're only gonna come out one time. Now, if I had to pour footings down, they wouldn't have to come out until that. They'd have to come out for that. But I just don't think that's realistic, and if you want people to pay the permit fees, we need to make them realistic. That's why we changed the whole basement finish permits, because they're not changing anything structurally. So it's dumb to have a permit. I mean, finishing a basement permit was like $1,000 before we changed it. It was ridiculous. Then you wonder why people are finishing their basements and they're not getting permits?
I had a complaint about this too. Someone was just doing a staircase up to their house, one of my neighbors, and Rum River Consulting considered it a deck. So they told him that he would have to pour the 48-inch deep foundations. They told him he couldn't use diamond pier footings. So they're wrong, and that's another thing. If you have a staircase up to your house, that shouldn't be considered a deck. He's charged a deck fee or a deck permit fee for that, for replacing what's already there. So I think there's a lot of room a lot of things that we need to adjust on this, and I don't know that Rum River Consulting is absolutely giving us the service that our
Well,
residents need.
some of these fees are put on, we can determine this.
Right.
Now, if you are putting something that you need to have footings in, diamond piers are, like I said, are legitimate, considered, they're engineered for this purpose. So what all that is doing is holding your deck post, so it's distributing the weight. But if you need to put footings down, I understand that you have to have the footings, but we need to determine that factor in that is what is being done. So I think a simple deck permit, and it's not just my decision to make, it's ours up here, to say a 24 by 24 deck. That's roughly, like, I'm just using that as a number, saying that should be based X amount of dollars. When you have to go bigger and it has to be engineered, then it's a different story, because you're building something that's or you got a 16 by 16 and a 12 by 12 and it's multi-leveled, then it should be engineered and that should cost more money. I understand that.
Mayor and council, I do want to let everyone know up there that we do have Rum River here and available. So if you have questions specifically related to what requires permitting and talking about foundations and things like that under decks, they are available to answer those questions.
I do have a question on that. So my neighbor's deck or staircase is probably 3 feet wide and, I don't know, 8 feet long. So what is that, 24 square feet? But they're requiring an engineered schematic for that. So I don't know, maybe he was wrong or mistaken, but I don't know how we could expect someone to pay an engineer, a boatload of money to engineer something that's already there, and he's just replacing it because it looks like garbage. So if there's any...
Sounds ridiculous.
Yeah, I don't know, maybe he's got the wrong information. He also told us that we can't use diamond piers according to Rum River, but I don't know, is that, any input you got?
Go ahead, yeah, you
Thank
may.
you, Mayor and Council. I'm Andy Schrader, Chief Building Official with Rum River Consultants. Thanks for the opportunity to speak to this, because as you're well aware, sometimes information is misunderstood or miscommunicated. I would like to know, if I could, the address of that property, because as you understand, diamond piers are allowable, under certain circumstances. Decks and certain projects, staircases and things, they are acceptable. They are not necessarily for room additions and roofed decks and things of that nature. So I'd like to know a little bit more about that.
Yeah, it was Main Street,
Do you have the address by chance?
I don't know the exact address.
Okay, I can get that from someone later, but I'd like to know what that address is.
Yeah.
Because diamond piers are acceptable.
Okay.
A frost-protected foundation, which that is required by state code anytime you're attaching something to a structure. So that's not anything that's discretionary under our rules, that's the state rules as far as attaching a structure to a house.
So even a staircase?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. As soon as it's attached to a building with frost-protected footings are likewise required. The reason is we don't want either one of them to move independently of the other. So now stairs are somewhat going to act as a hinge, but that footing is required by state to be below frost depth. That doesn't necessarily mean it has to be very big. An 8 or a 10-inch diameter is fine. It's just that the matter of that the base or the bottom of it needs to be below the frost depth so it's not going to heave. Thankfully, the soils around here are pretty forgiving, the sandier soils, but that still is a standard that's required by the state.
Okay. When was that put into place? Do you have any idea on that? Because
Frost footings have been in
Even
effect.
on a staircase? Oh,
Frost
ex-
footings have always been, that's always been a thing here in Minnesota. You get to southern states, you don't need diamond piers, you can just put a flipping block on the ground.
Oh, right.
Because they don't have the freezing. Frost footings is there for a reason, that's why they have to go down 4 feet. That's so they're below the frost line and they can't heave.
Exactly.
That's the whole reason behind
I
it.
know that on a house, but on a staircase that's wood, I mean,
Well, I've seen many staircases, bottom tread had to be on a frost footing.
If I might, I'd like to know that address, and I'll find that out to come
Yeah.
back with more information, because as Paul Harvey used to say, what's the rest of the story?
oh, right, absolutely. That's why I asked, because it's like,
So I'd be happy to find more information, bring that back to you.
okay.
As far as, if I might elaborate a little bit more on the price of a deck itself, so what we utilize is a price per square foot, $41. So what that would encompass would be a wood deck as well as a composite deck. It goes by the square foot. So if you have a small deck, that's going to be a relatively modest permit. If it's a larger deck with multiple tiers, like you say, then it's gonna go by the price per square foot, and that's $49. And that's middle of the road, if you will. That's going to encompass green treat, brown treat, as well as the composites. Because the plan review and the inspections are very similar. We're looking at the span rating of the decking material, again, whether it be 5-quarter wood or composites, because that's gonna depend on the spacing of the deck joists, as well as whether you can use it on stairs or not, and how far apart those stair jacks are. So the structural components are really the same, whether it be wood or composite. That's why we try to go with that average or that middle of the ground at $41. So on a 16 by 20 foot deck, that's gonna be about a $13,000 project.
So is that price including labor?
Yes.
So
Thank-
what?
Thank you for that, yes.
So what if a homeowner wants to do it themselves? Are they still assessed the $41 per square foot?
Correct.
And they
That-
have to
thank
pay
you.
a permit.
That's a really good question. That's a really good point. The state code, and understandably so, requires material and labor to be part of that. Because the fees are the same, because the requirements or the resources are the same. So even though if you had the material donated, or you had it left over and you had your own labor, the requirements of the city and of the inspector are the same versus somebody that had to pay the going rate. So that's why the fees need to include the material and the labor.
Who writes these codes?
State of Minnesota Department of Labor and Industry. But again, Mayor and Council, that's for a good reason, because the requirements of the inspector are the same. We still go through the plan review and the inspections, the same requirements, even though your labor is free to you, it still has value, which is plugged into the valuation of the project.
I guess we were under the impression that we were charging based on the value of the project, not per square foot, so.
It is, and that's how you arrive at the value, is the price per square foot.
I still think it's wrong, because I'm doing the labor myself,
high, yeah.
and that's my labor, my time. I'm not getting reimbursed for it, I'm not being paid for it. That's why I think it's wrong, and I've been working construction for 50-plus years. I've seen permits that are utterly ridiculous. An average house in Isani, the plumbing permit in Minneapolis is $5,000 for the average house that's in the city of Isani. That's how much they charge. And it's no different plumbing here than it is there. It's the same thing. It's what they can get by with charging. I don't agree with it. I never have. And like I said, if we do not make this reasonable for our residents, you're gonna see shit getting done. There is no permits done on
I
it.
agree.
Agreed, and that's why.
And that's why I still think it needs to be valued on the size of the deck. I don't care about the labor, I don't care about the cost of the material. It's the size of the deck. Your inspection time, you're looking at that piece of paper is the same. My deck actually is over-engineered compared to what it should be. Because I know what I'm doing, okay? And so you're still looking at it, I don't care if it's a 5-foot by 5-foot deck or if it's 50 by 50, you're still looking at that drawing. You're still looking at that handwritten drawing that the resident is turning into you. It takes you just as much time to look at a 5 by 5 as it does a larger deck. It doesn't, when I said 50 by 50, that's over-exaggeration. Or 20 by 20. 5 foot by 5 foot or 20 by 20, it's still the same thing. You know that your spacings or your joists have to be the same at whatever length it is. Mine are gonna be 12 inches on center, not 16, not 20, 12 inches on center, so I can span the 16 feet without having to have a cantilever. And I know that that's part of the code. I can do that by having that. I'm having 4 stringers instead of 3. That's because with the composite deck, you have to have that many. I know that. So I'm doing it the right way to start with. So with that being said, you're still looking at that piece of paper. It takes you just as much time to look at that. You're not having to come out and make multiple trips to look at my deck being done, because it's all gonna be one time. Once it's put up, the permits and filed and paid for, whatever, you come out and look at it one time. You don't need to make multiple trips, like building a new house. There's multiple trips on a new house or a remodel job or whatever. A deck doesn't really, maybe 2 trips, unless there is a code infraction. If there's a code infraction, then I understand you have to make another trip, and that's on me. That's not on you. Then I should have to pay for it. But I shouldn't have to pay for it up front, because it's gonna be done right. That's me speaking. And I still think the same with our residents. If they build the deck and you do not have to make multiple trips out there, why are we charging them for that up front? That's why I feel that that's wrong. And I will tell you, I lobbied for you guys to do that, because I've done a lot of inspections with Rum River. And I know you guys are good.
Thank you for that.
But I do also think that we gotta look out for our residents, not just me speaking. I'm not speaking this on behalf of me. I'll pay what I have to pay. I don't have to agree with it, but I still think if you wanna get more permits pulled for work being done, we need to be realistic to our residents.
Agreed.
And I don't think that's being unfair.
I'm still trying to wrap my head around, why am I not understanding? So I'm saying we're charging by the value of the project, and you're saying it's by square foot, but it is still value of the project. So you said it's $41 or $49, or what?
If I might elaborate on that a little bit further, so the size of the deck determines the value, and how you arrive at the value is the price per square foot. So the code does require applicants to provide an estimated value at the time of application.
Yep.
But then it also tells us we need to be uniform with the application of the code and the plan review fee and the permit. So there's how we arrive at the value, or the average, if you will. So those square foot values are provided by the International Code Council in the state of Minnesota. We also look locally at what the costs are of construction locally as well. And that's how we arrived at the 41, which I know is very good. It's a very good average of those prices. The situation that you spoke of with the diamond tier piers, that is the anomaly. Not too often do we have an instance where we come out one time. More often than not, the decks are 2, if not 3 inspections: footing, framing, and a final. If the deck is low to the ground, we're coming out for the footing before it's built. Then when the frame is constructed, we're coming out before the decking goes on, and then we're coming out for a final. That's more often than the situation: footing, framing, and final. Your instance is I appreciate that. We can do all the inspections in one, but we have to look at them as an average. Otherwise, there's gonna be a multitude of permit scenarios for the number of trips. Therefore, we're trying to look at the average where it's reasonable and commensurate to the service that we're providing.
But then again, if you have a deck that's 10 feet off the ground, you're gonna see the framing on that all the way. So then at that point, it's only 2 trips, because you're doing a footing inspection and then framing and final at the once. Because you're gonna see the framing underneath it anyway. I understand if it's low to the ground where you can't get underneath to see the framing. I understand that portion of it, but you're gonna have 9.5 times out of 10 times, you're gonna have, the deck is gonna be elevated so you can get underneath it. I have not seen too many decks being built low to the ground. At that point, I think I'd rather make a step down and put a patio down and not go all the work of framing and putting deck boards down. That's me personally. And I'd rather have steps down.
I just had a question for further clarification for myself as well on the fees. So are you saying that when we ask for people, or through the application process, what the valuation, if it's a 16 by 20 deck and they say, well, this is a $9,000 deck, are you not going to use their $9,000 valuation? You're going to use the uniform 41?
That is correct.
Okay, just so everyone's aware, you're modifying based on this uniform number of the $41 per square foot.
That is correct.
And that will be what you charge on, not actually the valuation that the applicant gives.
Correct. That's essentially meant to get us in the ballpark. That's what the code requires the applicant, again, to give us an estimated value.
And when the city was doing our own inspections, we charged on the actual valuation of the project.
I do think that there were some times where it would be, I don't know if challenge is the correct word, but I do think that he would say, well, no, based on X, Y, Z, this is the estimate, and there would be amendments to it. But it is kind of, I think, maybe a little bit fuzzy for people to understand what those charges are gonna be and why do we even ask for it then if there's this uniform. Maybe it should just be, this is what the cost is per square foot, you know, for the size of a deck, and then they can multiply it out. Otherwise, I think that it might give people unclarity right away off the get-go, saying, well, I told you this was 9,000, you're telling me it's 16,000? Because maybe they had their labor donated, I don't know, but.
You're right, if I might. It does make things, the state does make things a little bit of a challenge when they tell us that the applicant must give us a value, give us an estimate that we, at the end of the day, most often don't even use. But again, those are the rules that we're getting from the state. Sometimes it's higher, sometimes it's lower, but in order to be consistent, that's the thing. I mean, because otherwise, there are jurisdictions that have used whatever value each person provided and then calculate the fees off of it. That's wildly inconsistent. And then we get, rightfully so, we get into scrutiny for that. Therefore, in order to be consistent, and I would like to entertain that idea a little bit as far as tiering deck permits. Because now that does get more granular, if you will. It's going to take a little bit more scrutiny on the city's perspective and mine to say, okay, if this deck is going to anticipate one inspection, that's going to be the value attached to it. And if it's low to the ground and going to require 3, then we can assign the appropriate permit and fees to it. There's some validity to that. Thank you for that idea. But again, there are so many variables out there. In order to be consistent and clean, to use that word, get in and get out, we're trying to make it as affordable as we can and consistent. And that's how this system was arrived at.
So if somebody puts up a simple 10 by 10 deck, gets the lumber like Steve did, probably $200 worth of lumber, throws it together, it's all within code. He's gonna pay $410 for the building permit?
I would need to do the math, Mayor
It's
and Council. in order to-
$4,100 valuation.
Again, for those numbers to be accurate, I'd like to actually run those numbers for you to make sure that the size and the permit fees, because there's plan review fee and permit fees in that calculation. It's a spreadsheet like everything else.
So 10 by 10 is 100 square feet times $41, that's 4,100.
Correct. So
Rough.
then the permit fee is based on it, and the plan review is based on that permit amount. If you'd like, I can run some scenarios for next meeting and bring them for discussion.
Yeah, I'm curious to see.
You have a
them
very
too.
interest, you have
I'd like to look
a
at it.
spiked interest in it, and that's excellent. I appreciate that. If you'd like, I can come back with more information.
Yeah, I would just like to
Because
know what our
realistically-
residents are paying for these things, because
Absolutely.
that's one thing I had somewhere in here in mine. It's like we're having them pay all these permit fees. Well, pretty soon, everybody's eventually just gonna be like, to hell with it. We're just gonna build out a code and hope we don't get caught.
That's
And
why we
that's the
lowered,
problem.
that's why we lowered the basement finish fees.
Right, I know.
Because people were finishing basements without getting permits. And then all of a sudden, they're losing out on getting an electrical permit. But on the other side of that, if you do not show that you had pulled permits, when you go to resell your property and they come and do appraisal, they cannot, they can actually say, we're not appraising your property because you do not have the proper documentation that this was done legally. So there's a gray side to that, but people are willing to take that chance. You know what I'm saying? It's, you know what, you catch more flies with honey and you do something else, plain and simple.
If I might, in closure, I would like to come back to you with some additional information. Remember, these fees are there for a reason. The life safety, we're known as the first preventers, making sure that the composite lumber is not overspanned, overstressed, making sure that the basic elements of safety are there for the decks. So these fees are there for a very real purpose.
Could you come back with say, just a rough sample of maybe 15 different projects and what they cost? Like, say, just so, like a fence or anything that you have to do, and then we can kind of get an idea and feel what our residents are actually paying for what they're getting, you know what I mean? Is that?
Certainly, if you can be a little bit more specific, I wrote down decks, of course, because there's a vested interest in that. Fences are usually few and far between.
Sure.
Fences generally are a zoning permit if they're 7 feet and under. If they're over 7, that's a building permit. So if you'd like me to
Yeah, like,
elaborate
how
on
about
that.
plumbing, or, I mean, what are people generally doing? Driveways, that would be an
Driveways are generally zoning permits, not building.
okay. I guess I'm not sure.
Why don't you ask him?
No, what's the most common?
Certainly, well, when you're building a new home, there's a number of permits associated with that. Building, electrical, plumbing, and mechanical. Septic, if it's a septic lot. Plumbing and mechanical permits are what are known as set fees. Those fees don't fluctuate with the size of the house because our trips are very routine. They're very predictable as
They're
far as
also
the
set
rough
by
and.
fixtures, like in the plumbing is set by per fixture.
We don't go by the number of fixtures, because that results in a very expensive permit.
That's
We
what
do.
Minneapolis
Yeah,
does.
we do a set fee. Minneapolis and some others go by the number of fixtures. Now, all of a sudden, you're going in there counting bathtubs and sinks and dishwashers, and that's really over the top, in my opinion. The code does allow a set fee for repetitive, predictable permits, again. So when you're building a new house, that plumbing permit is the same, no matter the size of the house or the number of fixtures, because those, inspections are very predictable. The valuation of a new house is also determined by square foot. But again, I think I'm getting a flavor of what you are interested in. If you'd like, I can come back with a little bit more of a detailed report,
Yeah.
Identifying some of these things.
How about like windows, siding, roofing?
Another one.
Because that's,
Excellent. So the permits for siding, roofing, windows are all set fees.
okay.
They're $80. Just
Okay.
an
Yeah,
FYI.
if you could get a list, like a short list of just what the most common building permit is. So of existing houses, so our residents that have been here a while and want to add something on that may not have a set fee, I think is what we're most interested in.
Mayor and council, I think I can come back with a report that would explain more of this, if you'd like.
Yeah,
Sounds good to me.
yes.
Sure. I appreciate the time.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Andy. All right, we'll go, probably gonna have to wait on this next one. Is there anything real quick?
Mayor and council, if I may, I know that we are running short on time here. We did have Rum River available for that next item as well. If there were any questions.
3 minutes gonna be enough
would-
to?
Probably not, but
All right, we can
if
go
you'd
ahead and
like to
start.
have them stick around till
Sure.
after planning commission.
Well, we
if you're
can
able.
start that discussion. Let's see what we have time for. So, rental inspections, so this was one, I think, that I had also asked to bring up, and I know that Steve was, actually, it was the same day that we had discussed both of these things. So he'll probably have a lot to add here when he gets back in the room, but, I know there was the issue with the sliding bolt lock in the past that we corrected and, you know, which is, I mean, in their defense, I mean, they're supposed to enforce the rules that we have set, right? So they were doing what they could with that, but then I had heard that there was something else with, I think the same property owner, I don't know if it was the same property, I don't think it was the same property, and you guys maybe know, I don't know, but, Steve would be able to tell us more on that, but, they had to replace the landing or something like that at the bottom of the stairs. You know, you look like you know what I'm talking about.
Yes.
Okay.
So they're different properties, but it was a miscommunication. If there was an additional change, they would have had to make a change to that landing, but they did not have to
They
make
did
the
not have to
landing.
make that
It was a
change.
miscommunication between the property manager and the property owner.
Okay.
So,
right.
we did clear that up, and I know, specifically, Carrie here from Rum River Consultants can speak on it. She's the one who spoke to the property owner to
Okay.
ensure that it wasn't an issue or something didn't happen.
Okay.
But, and she's also here to speak on the entire rental program and process as well.
Okay, all right. Well, Steve, I was just kind of telling them that, you know, we had that discussion about that, I think it was Jurgens that had so that was just a miscommunication there, so, okay. Yeah, I mean, I don't know that there was anything other than, you know, we were talking about, you know, if we do that rental inspections in-house versus, you know, which is what we used to do, is that something that we want to consider? I mean, looking at those numbers, I don't think it's probably something we want to consider, but.
So I have something to
Go
add to that. So if you look at what it costs the city right now to hire Rum River, it's great for the city, actual city budget, but how much more are the residents paying for the permits than what we were charging before? That's my question, because if the savings in here are less savings than what taxpayers are paying, why wouldn't they just rather pay the taxes to have us have an in-house person? If a permit is 2 times as much now, would it be cheaper for them just to pay their portion of taxes to the city for us to have a full-time employee? Does that make sense? I just don't want the the residents that are getting permits to have to
So
pay
here's the thing.
significantly more.
So, just so you are aware, okay, we hire another in-house building official.
Yep.
Can't be an inspector, it's gotta be a building official to start with, because they have to have that license.
Yep.
So we're paying that person a yearly salary. The way it's working now, and I've had this conversation with Mike, is if we don't have any permits pulled, we're not paying anything out. We can't, as a city, we can't profit from those permits. So the fees, what percentage we're getting from that offsets our staff time for that stuff. So that's where that goes. So what happens if next year we have a full-time member, building official, and all of a sudden, there ain't zero permits, we're paying that person, we lay them off, we gotta pay unemployment, blah, 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 blah. With what's going on right now, sure, we write out a big check to them, but it's not actually costing us.
Right, I understand that, but what is it costing, the difference in permits for people that are pulling?
I don't
permits?
think
That's-
it's anything, because
Okay.
that permit, I'm basing my deck off of what I was gonna have to pay when we had Matt Small as our building official.
Okay.
Okay, so let's go ahead and, if we can get a motion to go into a recess.
Motion to
and,
recess.
Second.
I have a motion to recess from Councilman Merrill and a second from Councilman Holmgren. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. That motion carries 5-0. So we'll pick this up after the planning meeting is concluded here, which we're going to start in just a minute.
And just an FYI, Alexander Collins did let me know he's in traffic and will be here shortly.